They were designed to be the best. They met enemies face to face, endured tragedies and enjoyed victories. They went down in history due to the bravery of their crews. They are the ships that deserve to be called Naval Legends. In this episode, Project 7 destroyers, legendary Soviet Sevens. In Qingdao, eastern China, on the shores of the Yellow Sea, destroyer Anshan is docked at one of the port's moorages. She served in the Navy of the People's Republic of China for 30 years, but that's only one chapter in her biography. In the past, this destroyer was called Rekordny. She served in the Pacific Ocean, protecting the USSR's borders, and was one of 28 Project 7 destroyers, known to naval history enthusiasts as the legendary Soviet Sevens. The history of these destroyers began in the 1930s. After the Russian Civil War, the shipbuilding industry of the young Soviet state had to be rebuilt from scratch. By that time, the naval forces of the Workers' and Peasants' Red Army had only 17 destroyers that had been built before World War I.
Why destroyers? There's a saying, mighty oaks from little acorns grow. A destroyer is a versatile ship. She carries artillery, lays mines, fights off enemy planes, engages enemy ships, and conducts reconnaissance. She can carry out a multitude of missions. That's why this ship was intended for the Black Sea, the Baltic Sea, and to some extent the North Sea and the Pacific Ocean.
At that time, the Navy only had Noviks. Of course, they became completely obsolete, though at the time of their construction, they were the most powerful destroyers in the world. But by the 1930s, they were no match for their counterparts from the fleets of the greatest naval powers. That's why the Soviet Navy desperately needed a replacement for their destroyers.
The newest Italian Maestrale-class destroyer was chosen to serve as a prototype for Project 7. Soviet engineers went to Italy, studied the blueprints, observed the ship's construction process, and in 3 years created a general arrangement for a new Soviet production destroyer.
We have two main theaters of naval operations, the Black Sea and the Baltic Sea. Both are closed. This means that we don't have waves, we don't need ocean routes, and we don't need a big range of independent operations. We don't need to cross the Atlantic or Pacific Ocean between San Francisco and the Coral Sea to defeat the Japanese, for example. There were no such objectives. Everything is close, everything is near the shore. This is the reason why Italian projects were so interesting to us. They were also intended for close theaters of operations.
Total displacement, 2,400 tons. Length, 112.5 meters. Beam, more than 10 meters. Draft, about 5 meters. Power plant, 2 main GTZA-24 turbines and 3 water tube boilers. Power, 54,000 brake horsepower. Artillery armament, 4 B-13-2S gun mounts. Caliber, 130 millimeters. Anti-aircraft armament, 2 34K anti-aircraft guns. Caliber, 76 millimeters. 4 70K automatic anti-aircraft guns. Caliber, 37 millimeters. 2 DSHK machine guns. Caliber, 12.7 millimeters. 2 coaxial Colt Browning machine guns of the same caliber. Torpedo armament, 2 triple torpedo launchers, 39U. Anti-submarine armament, 2 depth charge throwers BMB-1, 67 big and small B-1 and M-1 depth charges. Mine armament, from 60 to 95 mines. Maximum speed, 37 knots. Cruising range, 1,447 nautical miles. The construction of new destroyers was in full swing when an accident that happened some 4,000 kilometers away from Soviet borders almost put an end to Project 7.
An English destroyer had a very serious accident. She hit a mine. It transpired that the linear layout of the power generating machines, consisting of one boiler room and one engine room, resulted in the ship being dead in the water.
This story discouraged the Soviet leaders. We are building destroyers that would sink after hitting a single mine? This cannot be tolerated. Our industry is not that strong, and we don't have enough money to lose enormous sums when our destroyers can't withstand a mine explosion.
Comrade Stalin ordered that the issue be looked into. And at the time, 1937, repression was at its peak. The verdict was sabotage. Those who worked on the project were charged. 3 engineers were sent to prison.
The project was on the brink of cancellation. 14 destroyers that had already been launched were to be redone, and the rest dismantled on the stocks. However, regardless of the threat of repression, designers of the Sevens managed to defend their project. A decision was made to finish 28 destroyers according to Project 7, while the following 18 ships were laid down according to a new and improved design named Project 7 New.
The main difference between Project 7U and Project 7 is increased survivability. This was achieved by installing 4 boilers instead of 3. Even if 2 boilers were disabled, it wouldn't be catastrophic for a destroyer. She could continue to maneuver even with a single boiler working. And that's all. Speed, maneuverability, artillery armament, torpedoes, torpedo and mine armament were the same. This was the main difference.
When designing Project 7 and 7 new destroyers, engineers put emphasis on mine and torpedo armament and artillery. Soviet 533mm torpedoes corresponded to those installed on ships from other countries, while her mines were some of the best in the world for the time. As for primary guns, engineers initially planned to arm the 7s with the so-called cruiser set, comprised of 130mm guns.
They created an excellent primary gun, which was outstanding for that time. It had a diameter of 130 millimeters and a barrel length of 6.5 meters. It turned out that the destroyer was the most powerful in terms of artillery armament until the American Fletcher class arrived.
World War II revealed the main shortcoming of the 7's anti-aircraft armament. When the destroyers were being designed, aircraft wasn't considered a serious threat.
That's why the anti-aircraft armament of the 7s was very weak. 2 semi-automatic 45mm K-21 anti-aircraft cannons, 2 DSHK machine guns, and that's it. The arrival of dive bombers made this shortcoming obvious, especially the German Junker Ju-87. This was an absolutely unique machine. They could drop a bomb directly into a large ship's smokestack to get past the armor. You can imagine the scope of devastation caused by a bomb that enters through the smokestack.
Due to the danger from above, the destroyers were augmented with a 37mm anti-aircraft gun. It had one major shortcoming. After about 100 of shots, its barrel would overheat and need to be replaced, often right in the middle of a battle. However, in general, the gun brought good results in battle. After the Navy began installing this type of gun on ships, and on the 7s in particular, their anti-aircraft armament was considerably improved, and they were now ready to protect the country's sea borders. By the beginning of World War II, 28 Project 7 and 18 Project 7 new destroyers were built. The ships arrived just in time and were on a par with those of their potential opponent, Germany.
The latest German destroyers boasted an extra gun. They carried 5 primary guns. They had approximately the same speed and a displacement that was about 500 tons greater, but they were equipped with an unreliable power plant. It had been designed to work best at maximum speed. As a result, the fuel consumption was much higher, which led to a reduction in the cruising range for German destroyers.
When the war began, the Sevens became the backbone of the Soviet fleet in all theaters of naval operations. In the Black Sea, they fought through to Sevastopol and Odessa to deliver ammunition and evacuate the wounded. In the Baltic Sea, they defended Leningrad, and in northern seas, they protected Allied convoys that supplied equipment and ammunition to the USSR. These ships were getting blown up by mines and directly hit by bombs and artillery shells, but then, after being repaired at docks, returning to the seas. 10 out of 28 Sevens and half of the Project 7U destroyers perished during World War II, but earned true military glory.
Let's take the Project 7 Guard destroyer Soobrazitelny, for example. During the war, the 4 years of war, she participated in numerous shore bombardments, troop landings, anti-aircraft and anti-submarine defense operations, and lost only 5 men of her crew throughout the entire war. Even then, they were lost when one of the boilers exploded after a serious malfunction. This means she had no battle casualties at all. Can you imagine this kind of survivability? 4 years of war and constant battles, and only 5 non-battle casualties. That's how good Project 7U was.
During war, it's not uncommon for a battle of local importance to become a milestone in the history of the entire war. The battle near Kaninos on September the 18th, 1942 was one of those battles.
Why this routine battle? It was just another day for the Northern Fleet. Nothing out of the ordinary. But why did Kaninos go down in history? Why do people talk about it so much? The thing is, in the summer of 1942, a tragedy took place. Convoy PQ-17 was destroyed. Under these circumstances, the British government and Churchill especially were convinced that supply convoys had to be temporarily suspended because it was too dangerous to send them out. In the summer and autumn of 1942, we desperately needed every gun, every aircraft, and every liter of fuel that Allies were bringing to us. Finally, in autumn, we were able to persuade our Western allies, Britain in particular, to renew supplies and to organize Convoy PQ-18. The whole world, every military and political leader of the Soviet Union, Great Britain, and the USA were following the fate of this convoy. Will it be able to reach Soviet shores? Finally, the convoy set off.
For the first half of the trip, the convoy sailed under the protection of Allied forces and lost 11 ships. Then, Soviet ships took over. 2 Project 7 destroyers, Gremyashi and Sokrushitelny, were among them. Near Cape Kaninos, the Germans organized a powerful combined attack on the convoy with aircraft and submarines. Torpedo bombers were the first to hit the convoy. A total of 24 Heinkel HE-111 aircraft made 2 raids. Then came the dive bombers. 60 Junkers planes attacked the Allied ships. German aircraft were met with powerful coordinated anti-aircraft fire from the patrol ships. Primary armament guns were firing time delay grenades into the water, taking the necessary target lead. Low-flying HE-111s, caught in the columns of water produced by the explosions, were falling apart or getting hit by shrapnel from exploding shells. The Germans lost 15 aircraft in the battle. 1 transport ship was hit by torpedoes. It was the only loss that the convoy suffered, while under the protection of the USSR's Northern Fleet.
It was difficult to fight off 60 Ju-88s, several submarine attacks, and that constant howling. It's really difficult to explain now. To understand how hard it was for the sailors, you need... Firstly, it was September, cold, but at the same time hot in the heat of battle. The constant howling of aircraft, water splashes, incredible tension. Aircraft attacking from all directions, and then there are incoming torpedoes, from the air, from submarines. Approximately 2.5 hours of this unbelievable tension. It's really hard to understand how difficult it was, even on a psychological level. But they endured this battle, protected the convoy, and proved that the northern route is passable, though dangerous. That's why Cain and Nos went down in history. This battle proved that Arctic convoys were necessary and must continue, and they were renewed.
After the war, destroyers, battered by fights and sea cruises, were sent for major repairs one by one, and in the 1950s, they were gradually decommissioned. Today, only 3 of the legendary Sevens exist, those given to the People's Republic of China. Rekordny is one of these ships. All her life, she served in the Pacific Ocean. In 1952, the destroyer underwent major repairs, was modernized several times, and remained in service until the end of the 1980s.
What does this tell us? Of course, she was modernized, improved. This just means that it was a good project from the very beginning. The hull framework and layout were that good that the ship could endure and serve for more than 50 years. It says a lot about the quality of the project.
Project 7 and 7U destroyers turned out to be timely and effective ships. They had powerful artillery, excellent torpedoes, and decent speed. These were the Sevens that took the Soviet Navy to a completely new level, becoming the backbone of the naval forces throughout the hard years of World War II, and their names became legends.